through denitrification. And to look at the same kind of idea in a little different view here is you have your tile drain coming in, and typically there's some sort of an inflow control structure. So you can bypass water during high flows if needed. And then you have your large wood chip bed. The wood chips basically serve as the substrate for the bacteria that are doing the work to denitrify the water. And then there's an outlet control structure to help maintain the water level within the wood chip bed, and then obviously your outfall to whatever your receiving water is. So this is your typical setup. There is currently a conservation practice standard, number 605, for denitrifying bioreactors that have been used, like I said, mostly out in the Midwest on larger ag fields with significant point discharges. They found 35 to 50% removal of nitrates from water flowing through it, so pretty good success. You know, they mention relatively inexpensive, but anytime I see a bulldozer and an excavator out there digging big trenches, I don't think of that as very inexpensive necessarily. No adverse effect to crop production or drainage. However, I'm not familiar with people row cropping over top of these. You can grow grass and hay potentially, but I'm not seeing a lot of row cropping right over top of these things. So then the question for us became, you know, how does the topography of, say, the upper Susquehanna River Basin and the smaller farm size lend itself to an installation of these kind of large on-field bioreactors? And is there a way to take those and take this idea and scale it down? So back in 2016, Cornell University and Rebecca Schneider began working on this idea of scaling it down, actually using the existing roadside ditches. So not digging new ditches, not digging new pits to fill with wood chips, but using the existing infrastructure that's there, your road ditch. And implementing these low-cost, quote, socks, if you want to call them that, or beds or mattresses, I've heard them called, in the existing ditches. They're easy to install, easy to remove, and her work showed about a 40% removal of nitrogen. So we thought, well, this is a good opportunity to go put in a CIG grant to see if we can expand this into Pennsylvania and take a look at how well they work. So we chose Bradford County in the upper Susquehanna River Basin, Canton Township in Bradford County, and we found a nice ditch line. You can see in the bottom right slide here, the ditch line, the right edge of the road, that drained approximately 40 acres of cropland, that upland back behind toward the upper part of the photo here. The Towanda Creek Watershed and a tributary to the Susquehanna River. This ditch does flow into a neighboring pond before entering a stream, and the pond was having nitrification issues. So I showed you the site, identify a suitable location for the bioreactors. And the other piece was, if you notice, I'll go back the slide, on the left-hand side of the road, you can see water flowing along the road. So there were issues with the road itself. And so we did complete the road work needed to reduce excess sediment and excess flow from the road entering the ditches, trying to, as much as possible, isolate the agricultural runoff within the ditches. Then installing 2 bioreactors in series, and I'll talk about that in a minute and why we chose to do that. And then monitor the nitrogen concentrations above the bioreactors, so the water coming into them, between the 2, and then below the bioreactors over a 2-year period. So the overall project goal is just to let's take a look at this effectiveness in existing roadside ditches here in Pennsylvania and see what we can remove of the nitrogen inputs from ag activities. Specifically, they hadn't tested them in series to see, do you get additional benefit from having multiple of these in series? So that was one of the next steps we looked at here in Pennsylvania, and evaluating some of the environmental factors, temperature, flow rate, et cetera, that influence performance. For example, it's a bacteria-driven process, so temperature will affect how active those bacteria are. And then establish a data set, hopefully to justify the widespread use. So as I mentioned, we did do some road work ahead of time to reduce some of that sediment loading that was potentially entering the ditches, reduce the overall flow, and try to help isolate more of that agricultural runoff. Also realizing that that would increase the overall efficiency and lifespan, not to have a bunch of road sediment and road ditch water coming into these bioreactors. The construction is pretty simple. Coarse hardwood chips, it was about 50% ash and then other mixed hardwoods. Put down some 1/4-inch polyester debris netting laid on the bottom of the ditch, fill the netting with wood chips, and just lock the edges down. Then anchor them into the ditch with rebar. Total cost for materials of these 2 bioreactors about 30 feet long was about $150, plus a couple hours of labor of some undergraduates, so you get some free labor or cheaper and expensive labor, and you can see that the total cost is pretty minimal for putting these in ditches. So then on to the sampling protocol. It was a 2-year study, and we grabbed 63 duplicate grab samples over that period on 22 different dates. We also had an automatic sampler, the ISCO sampler, set up to take storm events. We tested the samples for pH, conductivity, nitrate, and phosphorus. We also are continuously monitoring the water depth and temperature. We also went out, took flow measurements so that we could basically create a rating curve for the ditch so we could correlate our water levels to a flow rate and then come up with the total nitrogen load that was moving through the bioreactors, coming into them at the middle and then below when we did our sampling. So some of the challenges, well, they're pretty easy to get in, but as soon as we had them in, within about an hour, we had a rainstorm, severe thunderstorm. You can see they quickly were overtopped. 2018 was a pretty difficult year to do any kind of water sampling, as many of you know, because of the record-breaking rains over the summer. So the impact of that 2018 rains, and I'll come back to some of the, yes. All right, somebody, is there a question? Oh, okay. So some of the impact of those 2018 rains was fine sediment, and we actually went out in May of 2019 because there was clearly fine sediment choking some of the bioreactor matrix. And after sampling, we realized about 40% of the matrix was filled with sediment. So we opened up the bioreactors and actually just cleaned them by agitating them, and we're able to reduce that sediment down to about 6% of the matrix. Our recommendations are to clean or replace wood chips if the fine sediment is greater than 25% of the matrix. It would be easy to take a sample and send it off for analysis if you're concerned about that, or just replace the wood chips, which is pretty easy and straightforward. And most of what we saw from the sediment impacts was actually a couple of the fields that were basically plowed right up near the ditch line. And so field buffer strips would have minimized that sediment potential. So again, when you're siting these, think about how the farm is using the fields that drain to these ditches. So our findings are that these are a viable option. We found very wide-ranging removal rates from 0% to 100%, but our average was about 30%. Again, these are low maintenance. They just sit there in the ditches, and when water's moving through, they're removing nitrogen. Greatest removal under low flow conditions and those warmer conditions. Obviously, high flows and overtopping, like you see in this picture, significantly reduce those removal efficiencies. When we looked at it as a cost per pound saved, over that 2-year study, the cost was less than $3.50 per pound, mainly because it's so inexpensive to put in, and they do the work without having to monitor them continuously. You just put them in and you can basically walk away and they're doing their job. What I want to point out here is this early season of 2018. You can see here on the bottom half of the slide, these are actually our removal efficiencies that we have noted here. And so we're getting pretty good removal efficiencies at these lower flows. This is our sock height or the wood chip bed height. And then this is our flow here in blue, or how high our depth was coming in of the water. And you can see we had pretty good removal in this early period, but once it really started raining, we really were having almost continuous periods of overtopping of our sock. You can see our efficiency significantly declined. So again, siting is important. Where do you put these in? How much flow do you expect? We weren't expecting a year like 2018, and we thought we had a pretty good site for this with our 40-acre watershed, with the size of the ditch and what we were putting in there. Turned out when you have extreme rainfall all summer long, they're not as efficient. One of the things we did look at, because the contact time does impact the denitrification, the bacteria need time to work. So what you see here is in orange, or basically a breakthrough curve. We used deionized water and looked at the conductivity. So pouring deionized water at the inlet and seeing how long it took for that deionized water to move through the wood chip beds. So you can see in this breakthrough curve, when it's overtopped, it breaks through very quickly and you don't have a lot of contact time. When things are not being overtopped, you have much more contact time within those wood chip beds, which makes a lot of sense. So one potential option is to maybe put in small check dams at the end of your wood chip beds. You wouldn't want to put in a large check dam because you don't want to either flood the adjacent field or push water back onto your road, but you might be able to increase your contact time with some small checks within the system itself. So dissolved oxygen is also important for creating favorable conditions for denitrifying bacteria. So what we looked at is when did we hit this threshold of below about 2 milligrams per liter, really even down to 1 milligram per liter. So what you're looking at is from the darker green to the lighter green is as the water moves from the inlet through to the outlet of the system. You can see there were multiple days that we did see that dissolved oxygen drop below 1. However, other days where you did see these drops, we know that within those wood chip bioreactors, there would have been pockets that had very low DO within the system, and so it was still working during those phases. So some considerations when we think about how would you cite these and what would recommendations be for citing these if we were to come up with a conservation practice standard is how do you increase that contact time, or also known as hydraulic residence time, possibly some small check dams, longer length of the wood chip bioreactors within your ditch, and to create those low dissolved oxygen conditions. Obviously temperature, they sit there year round, but they're really only working during the warmer temperatures when the bacteria is active. If you do have a ditch that's dry and a flashy system where you only see flows when it really rains hard, you're not going to have much success because overtopping and during high rainfall events, they just don't work that well. Sediment impacts, you have to be aware if a farmer is plowing their fields directly adjacent to the ditches, you may end up with sediment impacts. Ditch slope, again, that goes back to kind of that residence time or contact time. The water moving too fast through the system would definitely reduce how effective they are. And then one thing we don't have a good handle on yet, because we just haven't used these enough, is really the best way to size bioreactors for the watershed area. It's something we're still working on. The matrix has been shown in these other large bioreactors to last for 5 to 10 years. So again, easy replacement. You can go in there and just take them out and put new wood chips in. Vegetation algae, we did have some problems with that, but we were able to just go out there and manually remove the excessive growth. You can mow over these if you're careful to your height, obviously, because you don't want to catch that debris netting. And then we would recommend if you install these to go out and just have the township or whoever would be in charge of these monitoring 2 to 3 times a year during the growing season, just to pay attention to is there excessive growth? Is there sediment inputs that have choked them out? Things like that, just routine maintenance. So some of the outcomes. So they can be a valuable tool for removing nitrogen from the field edge. We showed that. Efficiencies averaged about 30% with a cost of about $3.50 per pound of nitrogen removed. We do have a nice data set now compiled, and hopefully we can bring these to a wider use. And they can be easily scaled up. You're putting these in ditches, so you can easily just add them in series as we've shown. We did publish a CIG final report and a shorter fact sheet about these in-ditch wood chip bioreactors. We're starting to think about, can we bring this out to an interim conservation practice standard, or where do we go with our next steps? And then just going beyond nitrogen too. Some of you are probably more interested in phosphorus or other nutrients. We do feel this could be used potentially as kind of the basis for a low-cost watershed-wide filtration system, doing multiple nutrient removal, possibly best management practices using the existing ditch network. So I know I ran through that pretty quickly. I'd be happy. I think we've got a few minutes. You guys can let me know, but I could probably take a few questions. I will say I am not an expert in denitrification processes. So if you have chemistry questions, I may not be able to answer them, but I'm happy to try anything you guys might have for questions.
This is Ashley Lennig, CIG Program Manager.
Hi, Ashley.
Hi.
Where are we at, Tim?
There's no questions in the chat right now.
Okay.
Well, hey, did Ashley have a question?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. She cut out after saying, hi, this is Ashley.
Oh, sorry. I was just trying to say thank you for your presentation.
Oh.
It was nice.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley.
Thank
Sorry
you,
for
Ashley.
the problem.
Oh,
No
yeah.
problem.
Well,
Hey,
understand. Yes.
Eric, this is Pete. One of the questions that we've been following this your project here for a year or two now. You're part of the dirt and gravel road. Are they going to try to incorporate that in any of their dirt and gravel road situation as a pilot for that particular program that has a lot of money across the state?
Right.
Any idea for piloting that on those kind of situations?
Yeah, we've talked about that a little bit. You know, we'd be happy to if there's any conservation districts. I know there's some on the line here. Talk to them about doing that in coordination with some of our dirt and gravel road projects. I mean, it's an easy thing to do. Well, you already have crews out there working. So yeah, we'd love to do that. You know, we'd have to work with the State Conservation Commission, our sponsors, in terms of would we be able to fund it. I think it's probably within our mission to fund it through our program potentially as a pilot or demonstration project. But they are so expensive that even if we weren't funding them, I mean, they have a few $100s worth of materials to get them in there.
Yeah, and I like the idea. The fact is, if any dirt and gravel road situation or township identified where they had a nitrogen issue in their streams nearby from, hate to say ag fields or whatever, that would be an opportunity to mix those two together. And certainly from a township's point of view, it's a pretty low maintenance item. So hopefully you guys will be able to generate some opportunity down the road that can use this research and step it up into the real world, I guess.
Yeah, no, we'd love to do that because I mean, the more data we have, the more we can potentially justify an interim, you know, practice standard.
No other questions right now.
All right, well, I guess I kept you guys on time pretty well then.
Hey, Garrick, we truly appreciate you bringing this presentation and updating us on where this is at today, and certainly gives us an opportunity to think about some future endeavors with this project. Yeah,
well, I really appreciate it. And like I said, I know there are some districts on the line here, and you know, if you guys are interested in combining this with some of your dirt and gravel road projects, please feel free to reach out to me or anyone at the center, any of our technicians, and I'm happy to talk about it. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Eric. Tim, our other speakers, do you think they're online and ready?
Yeah, we have Pastor Barkley and Dimka Broswell. They both look like they're online right now.
Okay, thank you. So our next presentation is I guess a report on the Urban Conservation Subcommittee, and the two speakers are Dimka Braswell and Pastor Scott Barkley. Let's do a voice check to see whether you guys are on, and I'm not sure whether they're doing a presentation or not, but it's your turn to take the stage.
I'm here, Dimka.
Very good, Dimka.
I'm having some technical difficulties being locked out of my Mac, so I'm now on Google. So I'm going to try to share.
Dimka, I have your slides if you'd like me to share while you talk, Dimka.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn video off. So I just want to real quickly state that Philadelphia does have urban agriculture and urban farming. We have had a very large network of individuals, Black, brown, Hispanic, Asian, and white, having to, I guess you can say, do it on our own for several years. We do have urban farms. We are interested in solar and a lot of other tech things. But in doing this report and talking to the larger network of farmers and agricultural interests in Philadelphia, we have found some very interesting problems that we're working on. So we can have representations through Farm Services and NRCS to be able to get some of the technical information and funding that we need. If you can move to the second slide, if you can just move to the, yep, there we go. So what I decided to do was kind of talk about the main issues that we have here in Philadelphia, which is getting land access. Since a lot of the farmers and gardeners here have contracts with the city for leasing of land, it has always been a problem for those of us in agriculture here to have any kind of access to funding or anything, honest. So we've done it on our own. The first thing about accessing land and information by city government has been a continuing issue. We are working with varying city agencies as well as within the network to get more information. The misinformation from the city on what exactly is agriculture and what is the technical aspects of urban agriculture. We are writing an agriculture plan that we're hoping to submit to the city to hopefully clear up this information. But in the meantime, the gentrification and developers have kind of made us do a lot more before we submit information. We're also with funding directly for land purchases. Like I stated before, we have a lot of lease agreements with the city for farmers and gardeners here, which is extremely problematic with gentrification, with our parcels of land being put into different areas like the land bank or PIDC for other interests to purchase that land underneath us. And then we have other legal issues. We do have Philadelphia Law Project and Vacant Land 215, who has been assisting with us for some years, trying to mitigate these issues. This is an ongoing conversation. Yeah, there's some, sorry about the background noise. I'm turning the mic down a little bit. And then you can go to the next slide. Two things that we noticed that we need kind of immediately is a lab. Yeah.
Can I pause you for 1 second? Sorry to interrupt. Pastor Barkley, I think we're getting some audio feedback from you. Would you mind hitting mute until you're ready to talk? And I think that'll help out with our audio.
Okay, got it.
Thank you very much. Dimka, it's all yours. Sorry about that.
No worries. Two of the immediate needs we need right now are dedicated spaces that we can do soil and air testing and send it off to a lab. We're hoping that with a lot of the work that we're doing now with NRCS and USDA to get a farm services office here, that we'll have a partnership, if not here in the county, somewhere else within maybe Penn or Drexel or some other university we can partner with to have a dedicated site for the county for us to test the air and the soil. And one of the interesting things that we noticed with Philadelphia County is that we have a lot of people here who are registered grower producers and are certified with the Produce Safety Alliance for grower producer training. During the pandemic, we had a lot of issues with inspectors coming to farms and in grocery stores, but we realized a lot of us that have this certification could have been used in an emergency capacity with the Office of Emergency Management to help the gardeners and farms, as well as even spot check some of the slaughterhouses and those sort of things. So we're hoping while we're doing this agriculture plan that maybe we can have a partnership with that Food Safety Alliance to some way, shape or form, have a group of certified farmers and producers, certified farming producer certifiers to do like emergency inspections in case something happens or someone gets sick. That we already have like a ready group of people that we can take from our county to other parts of the state that are following the exact same guidelines as most USDA inspectors. But maybe us being a little bit more mobile or a little bit more tech savvy. That was something. And the last one is in process. We have a lot of metric information as far as land use, land mass, people who use alternative energy like solar, interest in methane digestion for gas. And we've been doing these kinds of researches with partnerships with Penn Extension and Villanova for some years on our own. And we've done a lot of small scale type of testing. And we'd like to bring NRCS and other partnerships in to help us design something that's more for not just Philadelphia, but other areas that might have the same situations that we have of just not having access or having a very heavy underemployed population that might be moved towards agricultural interests to help, start jobs or at least start training for agriculture to send out to the larger state. And we are interviewing and vetting individuals right now that are centered with STEM for solar, methane, and other alternative energy, hydroelectricity. We have a lot of very well-educated STEM individuals, underemployed contractors, plumbers here in Philadelphia who are extremely interested in learning OSHA regulations and any kind of state or federal regulations in building and maintaining these kinds of alternative energy things for Philadelphia on a smaller, big scale. And we have so many, the process is actually taking a lot longer than I thought, because we have people who do high tunnels, farm bots, and even stormwater management on the fly. They'll go to Lowe's, maybe partner with the water department, and then build it themselves to whatever specs the water department is shadowing them from, which is a lot, but it's something that we've been doing for some years. And the last thing is we're trying to figure out a way to use NRCS, USDA, and other agencies to have a business organization for agriculture, if not for the county, something for the state. We do understand that a lot of agriculture interests are industrial, big ag, very white centered. But here in Philadelphia, we have agriculture interests that go from the gamut from Black and Hispanic to experimentals with students at Temple and Penn. So it's kind of like we have a brain trust here, but the safety issues that come up with OSHA and maintaining small biodigesters or solar, we want to make sure that we're doing it the right way, safely, not just for ourselves, but also for the city and for our communities. But these are things that we're actually doing now, or at least investigating and researching now. So we're trying to make ourselves ready and available. So when we do have farm services representation, we're able to kind of just go and do the projects that we need to do, as well as have our county be a kind of green hub STEM beacon for agriculture, since we have such a diverse population of STEM, agriculture, and alternative energy people here. But that's basically the overview of Philadelphia. There's a lot more, but it's weird because we've done so much with less. I mean, I literally could do another 5 seconds or 10 minutes, but we want to be able to share our information, but we also want to be able to keep our, since we've done this, we want to make sure we don't have any proprietary issues with partnerships. We've had these things in the past, but we're kind of moving forward with the idea that since we've done it, we can share it within our communities as well as the larger state, for not just ourselves, but for everyone else. So that's basically it for Philadelphia.
Thank you. Hey, thank you, Dempka. This is Pete. And I guess Pastor Berkeley has a few words to say. If you turn off your mic there, or turn on your mic, Pastor Berkeley. Barkley? Okay.
Pastor, the button at the top right, probably where you click to mute, it's a little microphone. If you hit that, it should be at the top right side of your screen. It probably looks like a microphone with a slash through it.
Yeah, and while he's looking for his microphone there, Dimka, this is Pete Vanderstappen, state engineer, but I also had the opportunity to tour in Philadelphia about 2011, looked at a lot of the urban projects in there. Philadelphia does have a lot going on. And I think Pastor Dimka is on now. So go ahead.
I was actually going to say, Pete, the PIC program is a conversation that you, me, and a few other people would like to have outside of this.
Okay. We should do that. We should do that.
And it looks like we lost Pastor Barkley. Maybe he had computer issues. Looks like he's no longer in the meeting, Pete.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, but Dimka, we really appreciate your update on the urban situation. Like I said, I was there in 2011, and there's a lot going on in all these little half-acre, one-acre sites, and owning land and leasing and water supply, and there's 1,000 little issues there, and it's hard to keep an organization going down there. But I know you guys are making great progress, and you've learned a lot, and a lot more to go. But you should work to schedule a conversation with me off on another day, and we can talk about some other things. So please do that. And
Absolutely.
I think with that, we're going to have to move on to our next presentation.
Real quick, Pete, this is Abigail.
Yes.
I just want to point out that Pastor Barkley did submit a report, and so you can read that at your leisure.
Okay, thank you. And everyone has access to that once our connections work on our system there. So thank you, Abigail, for reminding us of that. So his word will get out more silently. Thank you very much on that. Okay, with that, we're going to move on to the next presentation, which is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. It's going to be presented by Jared Shipley out of our district conservationist. And Jared, you're up next.
Thanks, Pete. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yep.
All right.
Hey, Pete, can I get in some other time? I had to change devices.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, if you got five, let's do your 5 minutes right now. I can interrupt Jared. He'll be fine. He can wait for 5 minutes.
Well, what I wanted to do, because my presentation everyone has, I just want to go briefly and do broad strokes as far as solutions are concerned. In urban America, and the Wall Street Journal says rural America is the new urban America when it comes down to poverty levels, unemployment, et cetera, and drug abuse, and so forth and so on. So going back down to my solutions, the very last one, it was like it talks about the conservation finance program, the environmental markets program, making urban farming part of the NRCS's actually put it really in its wheelhouse. So from an assessment standpoint, it's clear to me that, and it's probably clear to everyone, that when this pandemic hit, the ones that were most affected were those who were at or below the poverty line. That being the case, the question is, what are we going to do when the next, not if, but when the next pandemic happens? I think that we have a perfect storm here to actually prepare ourselves through the USDA, through some of the suggestions that I have. Case in point, I think that NRCS and USDA ought to formulate an urban farm regional hub where Pennsylvania can have, say, 4 quadrants, and each quadrant might have 3 regional offices, so that the potential urban farmer would not have to travel too far to get the assistance that they need. I think that we can begin not just doing the traditional farming, but gravitate in a real way to aquaponics, aeroponics, and hydroponics, and deploy this type of farming in places like schools and childcare centers, senior citizens, so as to, if there were pandemic where people were forced to stay at home, they can at least be growing things and eating healthy, if you will. But it's going to take a Herculean effort to really move this forward, but we can have to start somewhere. But in any event, that's my take on all of this. This is our first report, and I think it's doable because we're already doing it on a microcosm level, and it's working. But that's it, Pete. That's it in a nutshell.
Pastor Barkley, I appreciate that, and I'm glad you put it in the written word. And I talked to my engineering leadership about 2 weeks ago, and NRCS with the new administration and this urban outreach is still, I think we're still processing our policy, how we're going to move forward. So I'll try to make sure, I will make sure this information gets passed up the line to our senior staff up there, so that at least they get some real live input from the world, from Pennsylvania. So we'll make sure that happens, Pastor Barkley.
Okay, thank you much.
Okay, and with that said, we're going to jump back to Jared.
All right, thanks, Pete. So like Pete said, my name is Jared Shippey, and I'm a district conservationist for NRCS down in Bedford County. And one of the offices that I have is in Potter County up in the northern tier. And located within Potter County is the headwaters of the Genesee River. So what I want to talk about today, I want to give a brief introduction on our Great Lakes Restoration Initiative up there. And then we're going to have the introduction video, a series of videos that we have developed in cooperation with Headwaters RC&D. So just a quick background on the GLRI. In the past, we have worked through GLRI as part of the EQIP program, where we would receive some initiative money and work with private landowners to complete contracts similar to the way we do with our general EQIP program. A couple years ago, we were working with NRCS in Wisconsin, and they were working to create a demonstration farm network up in their neck of the world that dealt directly with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and some of the funding that they were receiving. So working with our Harrisburg State office, we were able to create this demonstration network up in the Headwaters Genesee Watershed. And we are working directly in partnership with Headwaters RC&D, and multiple partners have been included in this project. Penn State Extension, the Potter County Conservation District, Grazing Land Coalition, DCNR, and multiple partners. But basically what we did, rather than fund a few specific projects during the year, we're working with 3 landowners. One of them that is a beef operation that is doing some grazing work. Another one is a cropland producer. And then we also tied in a forestry producer because we do have a lot of interest in our forestry programs up in the northern tier. And what we're doing is it's a 3-year agreement, and we are implementing best management practices on these farms and forest land, and also looking at some innovative monitoring and record keeping, things of that nature. And so far it's working out really well. Some of the practices that we've done on the beef and the grazing one, we've done manure storage, heavy use area protection. We're doing prescribed grazing, some innovative record keeping, different tests for forage analysis, lime sampling, water sampling. We've incorporated stream bank fencing into that one. On the forestry one, we're looking at invasive control through our 314 brush management and 315 herbaceous weed. We're also looking at some riparian forest buffers. On the cropland one, we're doing some precision nutrient management, testing for nitrogen and phosphorus, some yield testing, late season stock tests, different mixes of cover crops, looking at different rotations, things of that nature. So the idea was to hold a field day sort of in construction that, farms, neighboring farms, landowners, the public, whomever could come and tour the farm and look at some of the practices and while they're being installed and can kind of get some of the before and after picture. With the pandemic, though, we were able to adjust, and we decided to go the route of creating this video series, which, in my opinion, I think it turned out really well because, rather than a field day, this is something that we can look back to and use over and over again. And the video series that we created is I believe it's a 9 video series. But if anybody would like to check that out, certainly on the Headwaters website, and if somebody would reach out to anybody in NRCS, whether it's Tim or myself, we could certainly send the link out. But the videos are certainly worth checking out. I think they were put together very well, managed with the partners. And so without further ado, the first video that we're going to show to the State Technical Committee today is the introductory video to that series. So on this video, there's going to be an introduction by Amanda Murdoch, who is our district conservationist in the Coudersport office, as well as Jason Childs, who is the district manager. This video also introduces the 3 participants and, just kind of gives a brief overview. The remaining videos in the series gets into the specific details of what we're doing. There's some water quality best management practices. There's one on the heavy use area and keeping water clean. There's some on soil health using a grazing stick, pasture efficiency. There's one on buffer planting, soil health practices, planting green. I mean, like I said, it's a very good series of videos. Certainly that gives a great overview of the initiative. And the idea is here to finish collecting data for 2021 that we're currently doing as far as winter data collection and spring planting and manure spreading, things like that. And then to, hopefully hold a field day here sometime in the next few months. If not, though, we certainly can look to maybe create some final videos, showing the final product. So without further ado, I will let Tim go ahead and show the introductory video, and thank you everybody for your time.
All right, Jared, I'm going to put the link in the chat as well. If anybody is running on a slower network, if the video doesn't load, the link will be in the chat, but I'm going to share the video now.
Resource Conservation and Development Council presents the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. In partnership with the United States Department of Agriculture, Natural Resources Conservation Service, the United States Environmental Protection Agency, the Foundation for Pennsylvania Watersheds, the Pennsylvania Grazing Lands Coalition, Penn State College of Agricultural Sciences, Penn State Extension, the Potter County Conservation District, and by the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, Bureau of Forestry. Thank you for your support.
Welcome to the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Demonstration Farm Network in Potter County, Pennsylvania, in the Genesee Watershed. I'm Amanda Murdoch with the Natural Resource Conservation Service out of Coudersport, Pennsylvania. The Great Lakes Restoration Initiative is a national initiative which will aid in the evaluation of the physical, chemical, biological, social, and economic impacts of agriculture on non-point source pollution within the Great Lakes Basin. Multiple states within the Great Lakes Basin are participating in this initiative, including Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, this initiative consists of 3 farms within the watershed, in which I'm standing next to the Genesee River right now. The 3 farms that we're working with, its goal is to reduce non-point source pollution that will impact the Genesee River. These farms include the Brent Bacon property, which is a forest landowner, the Michael Thompson property, which is a livestock producer, and the Dean Irway property, who is a cropland producer. This initiative is managed by the Headwaters RC&D Council with the Natural Resource Conservation Service, in cooperation with Penn State Extension, the Bureau of Forestry, and the Potter County Conservation District, as well as others. The goal is together to reduce non-point source pollution, particularly phosphorus, by implementing best management practices, innovative testing and techniques that will systematically reduce phosphorus runoff within the watershed. Stay tuned for educational videos from our partners that will showcase the great work that these landowners have been doing.
Hi, I'm Jason Childs, District Manager at the Potter County Conservation District. Potter County is home to 3,131 miles of streams and rivers. It is also the location of the only triple divide, or place where three major watersheds originate east of the Mississippi River. The Allegheny River, Pine Creek, or larger Chesapeake Bay, and Genesee River watersheds all originate in a farm field right here in Potter County. The GLRI Demonstration Farm Network project is located within the Genesee watershed, which encompasses approximately 9% of the county's landmass. The agricultural practices being implemented will help address the sediment and nutrient concerns along the east branch of the Genesee River specifically. Water quality impairments in the Genesee watershed are largely attributed to agricultural activities and pathogens. Over the past several years, the Potter County Conservation District and partners have been conducting baseline water quality monitoring of surface water streams throughout the county. The location that we're currently standing at, here on the middle branch of the Genesee River, once had a data logger deployed, right over here. These stream monitoring devices measure temperature, conductivity, and flow levels at a 15-minute interval, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days per year. Conductivity is the measure of the water's ability to pass electrical flow. Essentially, the more particles that are suspended in the water, usually in the form of sediment, the higher the conductivity. The goal was to establish a set of data to illustrate what the typical characteristics of a particular stream are. Within the GLRI Demonstration Farm Network project area, several data loggers were installed on the east branch of the Genesee River and adjacent tributaries. This particular area within the watershed showed baseline data characteristics with higher conductivity readings on average compared with other streams within the Genesee watershed as a whole. During runoff events, the east branch of the Genesee River's conductivity was more than double what the middle branches would be. This illustrates the difference in land uses between the two tributaries.
History of the farm begins, my dad started renting it back in the late 30s.
My grandfather purchased the original farm, I think in 1942.
My grandparents, Henry and Dorothy Hamilton, their family actually purchased the farm in the 1950s.
I have many fond memories growing up in the watershed.
Brothers and aunts and uncles, we'd go fishing and wading in the creek.
Ever since I was a little kid, I remember going with my mom and dad back into the woods over the hill. There was a leak patch. I've dug quite a few leaks in my time.
Building barns and helping put tin on roofs and getting the wrong nail every once in a while and then go and put ice on that.
I would fish the Ludington branch, and that's where I learned to fish all branches, all the tributaries of the Genesee.
And that's the bottom line. We're trying to clean up the streams. We're trying to build soils, not deplete soils.
There's more efficient ways of doing what I have been previously doing, and excited to continue that process.
Fencing behind us, we got this riparian area right here. We have stream bank fencing.
I mean, the water is cleaner. Just visually, you can tell the cows don't have to go to the creek to get the water.
I've been working conservation projects since probably 2004 or 5.
We've been implementing the no-till part of it, cover cropping. We've been taking temperature and moisture of the soils throughout the winter and in the springtime.
The heavy use feeding area is going to let us keep cattle off grounds when there's mud and pugging.
We have water sampling.
Soil sampling, following the recommendations on that.
We've done leaf sampling.
The line that we put on and the equipment we are learning to use with temporary fencing in the water system. Excited to see where that will take us.
One of the biggest things that I've learned, especially with growing the corn, is when to apply the nitrogen, whatever else that's needed in there to get a good growing crop.
Now we're able to greatly intensify how much we can move and paddock sizes.
I know I've planted trees along watersheds and riparian areas.
This year by far was probably about the best crop that we have had.
All the representatives that have involved been involved with this project are absolutely a pleasure to work with. I've enjoyed it very much.
They're there to help us.
It made me feel like I can pick up the phone, call them anytime.
There's always an answer.
Take the information that I get back and apply it.
Give them a call. Yeah, that's about it.
I didn't finish with all the credits. Pete, did you want to let that run for the next minute?
I think that's fine. Jared, do you have anything else you want to say on this presentation?
I just put a plug in, so that's one of the introduction video in the series, and certainly I encourage anybody that's interested in the other videos to visit the Headwaters website or contact somebody from NRCS, whether it's Tim or myself, to get the link to the other videos. And that is all I had for today then. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jared. And I think this is a good reminder that, we focus all on the Chesapeake Bay, but we do have the Chesapeake, in addition to the Chesapeake Bay, with the Potomac, the Ohio, the Genesee, the Delaware river basins, and the issues that they have in that little Genesee river basin, just a little wee part of Pennsylvania, apply to the entire state. So I think it's a very well put together video. With that said, we're going to move on to our technical report section. And first up is our moderator, narrator guy here today is Tim Peters to talk a little bit about the engineering update for Pennsylvania.
All right, thank you, Pete. Just to give a quick engineering update, a couple of things that have been going on here at NRCS in Pennsylvania. And the first thing I wanted to mention is that we have updated a couple of our standard detailed drawings. And Pennsylvania has a collection of standard drawings and designs, which can be found on the PA NRCS engineering website. And we looked at just 3 of them recently, and those were PA 64, PA 67, and PA 83. Now, these 3 designs are designs for circular concrete mineral storage tanks. So we looked at, and that's all of the circular concrete tank designs that we have as standard detailed drawings. So we looked at those 3, and what we did is we increased the horizontal reinforcement steel in the bottom 1/3 of the tank walls. It wasn't a huge increase, but a slight increase, with the thought that that's going to stiffen up the bottom of the walls somewhat and reduce any cracking as they are being constructed. And then we also made a few other minor changes just to make the 3 tank designs consistent with each other. So there were a few other small changes, but the main change being that we added some steel to the bottom 1/3 of those tank walls. And I have to say, the one point I want to make here is that these are standard detailed drawings, but that still requires the designer have a full-blown site design completed, and that designer or the person signing off on that design be a professional engineer or be a person that is and has engineering job approval authority in the appropriate level. And the same would apply to the construction, when the project's completed. Even when using these standard detailed drawing designs, you still need to have a PE or someone with engineering job approval levels sign off on the construction once that project is completed. All right, that's what I wanted to say about those. Moving on. The next item that we've worked on here in Pennsylvania recently is the new fact sheet. This is fact sheet number 11, and it is titled Pennsylvania Groundwater Withdrawal Guidelines. And Mark Buckwalter, one of the engineers within the Pennsylvania State Office here, has worked on this, and this is now released and on the PA NRCS engineering website. And this document gives some guidelines for withdrawing groundwater from wells, specifically high withdrawal amounts from wells. And there are several watersheds in Pennsylvania, but there are 2 groups, the Susquehanna River Basin Commission and the Delaware River Basin Commission, that review and regulate high groundwater withdrawals within their watersheds. Now, the amounts we're looking at are somewhere around withdrawals that are 100,000 gallons per day on average over a 30-day period. So it's high withdrawals. It's not going to apply to your typical residential well or small watering system well, but this could be something that comes into play for some of our bigger irrigation systems. So something to keep in mind, and this is a fact sheet that helps just outline some of the guidelines if you fall within one of those watersheds. And then the third thing I want to mention is that NRCS at a national level has extended the comment period for a group of National Handbook of Conservation Practice Standards. This is the time where we or anyone can comment on the national standards before they're released to the states. Once they're released to states, then we in Pennsylvania will have the opportunity to make that more state specific and just make some Pennsylvania revisions to those standards. But right now, if anybody wants to make comments on the national standards as they stand, you can do that by going to this link. And you don't have a lot of time. You have 2 days. It's the deadline was extended to 4/22, so 2 more days to take a look at those if you like. But they will be coming to Pennsylvania, and we will be going through our review process and making that state specific. So there will be more opportunity to comment on Pennsylvania standards once they are ready. And if you want to see the ones that have that deadline extended, these are the standards that you can look at a national level until 4/22. And all the standards are being reviewed as part of that 2018 Farm Bill. And so we're midway through many of the standards. Many have been released to Pennsylvania already. And so we are working on making them state specific, and we will be getting them out to you for comment if you would like. Sometime within the next few months, you'll be seeing many standards coming out, and that will continue probably over the next year or two. So you'll be seeing lots of standards. All of them at some point will be completed as part of the 2018 Farm Bill requirement. And then the last thing, our dam rehab update. We have dam engineers here in the state office, and they've been diligently working on some new projects, and the Beaver Creek Dam in Chester County is slated to begin rehab construction, and that's going to start in July or maybe the beginning of August, and that's going to last until it's completed, or it's possible that winter shutdown may require a halt for the winter season. But KC Construction is the construction firm that was selected to do the rehab, and they're the same firm that has completed the past 2 NRCS dam projects. They completed North Fork Dam in 2010 and 2011, and then they also more recently worked on the Hibernian Dam in Chester County in 2020. And construction was planned for 2 construction seasons due to delays, and starting due to, we have nesting bald eagles. So we're waiting for those eagles to get their wings and fly away. But the eagles they're currently being monitored by the dam owner, and a chick was identified in the nest in late March. So we're waiting for that chick to take off. There's coordination with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and construction will occur if that eagle takes off and fledges before we expect it to, or before our August 1 start date. The contractor plans to complete all the rehab work during this construction season if they can. They're hoping to, and major work that's going to occur will include replacing the principal spillway tower, placing roller compacted concrete in the auxiliary spillway, and installing a new trench drain and cleanouts to the existing tow drain. And just a little bit more details on the project. The accepted low bid for that rehab for the construction was about $2.2 million. And Adam Winey, one of our NRCS engineers out of the Bloomsburg Tech office, will be the primary quality assurance inspector on this job. There may be a lot of work going on at one time, so we may be calling on some other engineers to assist with that quality assurance, but Adam's going to be performing the main bulk of that inspection. And that is all I have, Pete. So those are the engineering updates. Any questions? Nothing in the chat. So Pete, I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, Tim. Hey, keep that slide on for a second. If you're a visual person, it almost looks like a bird flying from the left to the right, looking down on a bird flying. So it's kind of coincidental that we're waiting for an eagle to fledge out of its nest. So maybe that's a sign. Okay, on to the next presenter. It's Dan Ludwig, our State Resource Conservationist for Ecological Sciences.
Well, thanks, Pete. You must do well on those ink blot pictures.
Yes, I've passed the test.
All right. Tim, you want to drive the slides for me?
Absolutely, no problem. And here we're at them.
All right, perfect. Well, welcome everybody. Wanted to send greetings to everyone. I'm sorry I missed the last meeting in January. Yuri Plowden and I were nominated to participate in a leadership development program, so we were tied up in our kickoff training session last time, so I didn't get to give you an update. So my update today is going to cover a bunch of things that have happened since the last time, and we're going to kick it off with some of the training that we've been able to hold. As we've talked about, our COVID situation has really played a role in our office staffing, but it really did not affect our ability to still provide training to our staff and partner employees. So in November, we were able to still hold our introduction to conservation planning. This is geared towards our new and beginning planners. It's a 3-day classroom mixed with in the field type instruction, and we were able to provide that to 30 NRCS, a combination of NRCS Conservation District and partner staff like our Pheasants Forever biologists. We also provided, as Gwendolyn Cruz, she has since resigned from the agency, so I've been picking up her workload, and one of the things that Gwendolyn has always done on a yearly basis is to provide the Certified Planner Update meeting for all of our certified planners or apprentice planners. And that we held as a virtual event through, we used the virtual platform. We did 2 sessions, 4 hours each day, and that we had pretty good success overall. We had 138 staff attend that and get updates on practice standards, doing environmental evaluation for our worksheets, and had just a great time. A lot of good questions generated out of that. And that's something that we're looking forward to doing, hopefully in person, and now that things are improving over time with the pandemic. But again, a lot of good information that was shared between a lot of our state discipline leads and other specialists. Go ahead and next slide, Tim. The next unique opportunity that we were able to provide to, again, our staff and partner employees is Elizabeth Mark. She was on a 1-year detail to the Northeast Climate Hub, and she reached out to Denise and I and was interested in providing some training to our staff on this topic of, as we know, with this new administration, there's been a lot of emphasis put on carbon sequestration and carbon smart practices. So Elizabeth provided us a nice 2-hour training talk showing us, what it would take to get maybe to carbon neutral, do our carbon reductions, and showed how the different practices that we use in conservation planning have a great effect on that. And, as we know, no-till farming, cover crops, anything that does with soil health are on the top of that list. And we're proud to say in Pennsylvania that we've pretty much been a leader in soil health and our no-tilling and cover crop farming. So it was good to see that a lot of the practices that Elizabeth covered, we do a lot of here in Pennsylvania through either CTA planning and definitely through our EQIP program. And she had, with that presentation, we had 180 participants. Again, that was a virtual event, and according to Elizabeth, that was the biggest audience that she has had for any of her other presentations. So we kind of rocked it off the charts for her. And then just recently, we just finished up the Conservation Boot Camp 1. That was done as another virtual event, half days, Monday through Thursday, and we have had 50 participants for that session, and that will be moving towards in August. We'll actually have the field portion of it. Uniquely enough, 50 participants registering this year is kind of a record number. So, which kind of puts us in a little bit of a pickle because, again, with social distancing and trying to keep everything safe for COVID, we're only able to have 35 attendees out to that field session. So what we're looking at doing is we've accepted those 35 and the remaining 15 we're going to live stream or attempt to live stream the actual field sessions so they can watch live as these sessions are going on, and then there will be some activities that they can do going out with a certified conservation planner. They'll have their checklist, so we've given them 7 activities. They only have to do 3 of those, 3 out of the 7. They have to be signed off by that planner, and then they will get credit. Those 15 participants will get credit for attending the field session of Conservation Boot Camp 1. And coming up in August as well will be our Boot Camp 2. Next slide. Moving on into our conservation planning side of things, this year is our second year using our new platform for conservation planning. In the past, we used a program called Customer Service Toolkit. That went away, and we've moved into using Conservation Desktop, which is essentially an online-based Esri product. So we do all of our mapping, and then the development of our conservation plans is through that platform. And then we also have CART, which is the Conservation Assessment and Ranking Tool. Now, once we go out and identify resource concerns on the farm, our planners come back to the office, sit down and use the CART program. They enter in the resource concerns that are found on the farm. They collect data on any existing practices, whether they meet standards or they're observed. And that gets combined in with some background information, some geospatial information that's run through the program. And essentially, the assessment part of it shows us whether or not the agreed to actions of the participant is enough to meet the threshold of essentially meeting and solving that resource concern. So a lot of the resource concerns have a threshold of 50, but it does vary from resource concern to resource concern. But again, it's a great tool. It's also helping us to prioritize our rankings, obviously, where we get more conservation benefit for the dollar spent. That allows those projects to rank higher. So, and we're in the process of, and Scott will talk about this, we're in the process of moving into the contracting phase based on these assessments. So, this year has gone a lot smoother because we're in the second year, but the progression and the fixes to these programs have gone smoothly. And I just pulled some numbers just to kind of show what kind of work we've been doing so far in fiscal year 2021. So as far as conservation assessments, based on the records that I've pulled, we've completed almost 1,200 assessments across the state. And then I was able to look at that data, and we had some counties that were tied for completing 59 assessments. And our lowest county had about 5 assessments done. So, but again, when I saw that number, that was pretty shocking to see that we've been out and assessed that many conservation plans or going for either just regular CTA planning or a financial assistance program. Next slide. One of the other things that we rolled out this spring, which we finalized, was our Ecological Sciences Job Approval Authority. So this is exactly like the engineering side of things. So, from the engineering side, all planners must have a job approval authority for design, I&Es, and construction. And we've rolled that out. We finalized our details and completed a training to our staff. We did that here in February of 2021. And essentially through that job approval authority, we've broken it down into 7 different categories of where planners will get this job approval. So obviously our certified conservation planners, they have about 42 practices assigned to them. Our apprentice planners have 23 practices. And then we have broken it down, and now we've identified certain planners that'll serve as our technical specialists in these different categories, such as the CNMP, or grazing, forestry, wildlife biology, and soil health. So while we're not expecting everybody to be the expert, essentially these 5 categories of technical specialists will be the ones that, as our planners need to increase their job approval, they can work with the individuals identified as these technical specialists to get the training that they need to increase their job approval. So this is something we've been working on. My predecessor Dan Dosty had been working on, and I'm pretty proud that we've gotten to the point where it's out and it's rolling, and looking forward to seeing how our staff will be embracing it to improve their job approval assignments that they've been given from the beginning here. Next slide. And then pretty much the big thing that is part of my update today are the conservation practice standards. As Tim mentioned, we have all the new national ones are out for comment, and then the last round from the prior year, we've made those comments. So what we've released so far is our 590 nutrient management and our 595, which used to be called integrated pest management, now called pest management conservation system. Those were rolled out and posted for planners to use on October 1st. The other one we're just about ready to publish is our 512. It used to be called forage and biomass planting. From the national, that practice went under a name change, went back to pasture and hayland planting, and so Susan Perry has been working on that, and that will be released pretty soon. And then up and coming, which is now going to be available as a handout and is available for your comment for the next 30 days. Those first drafts are there. So we'll have our review period for starting tomorrow, running through May 21st. And you will find the updated practice standard for prescribed burning, our riparian forested buffer, and tree shrub site preparation. So if you have an interest in any of those practices, please take the time over these next 30 days, review, and then you can provide any comments back to myself, and we'll take a look at those and work those into releasing our final draft. With that, that's what I had for my update.
Tim, is there any questions so far for this presentation portion?
Nothing in the chat.
Okay. Next, we're going to go to soils and compliance. And with that, we're going to have, instead of Uri Plowden, we're going to have Melissa Hanner, a resource soil scientist, speak up on soils and compliance.
Hi, this is Melissa. Let me just get my screen changed. Are you able to see me?
No problem, Melissa. Yep. I can. Well, we haven't seen your screen. It looks like it's working on it. There it is. You're good to go.
Okay, great. This is just a quick update because last year I asked the State Advisory Committee to participate or assist with a review of farmed wetland hydrology indicators. This was required based on a final rule made to the Food Security Act compliance provisions, and NRCS has been directed to publish hydrologic indicators for farm wetlands to the local NRCS Field Office Tech Guide, and all of those publications come through all of you. So our hydrology indicators are being posted for areas that are not potholes. So pothole wetlands occur in glaciated areas in the northern corners of Pennsylvania. So we're posting indicators that apply to all those other areas within the interior and southern extent of Pennsylvania. And these indicators demonstrate a criteria of hydrology ponding for greater than 15 consecutive days or more during the growing season. Pennsylvania has chosen to follow a national template. These indicators are very specific and meet legally defensible criteria outlined in the law. Pennsylvania did go through and add slight modifications, or in fact, instructions and cautionary language to these indicators. So you will see that there were 11 indicators. There is one national indicator we will not be using. We're taking the others and just adding some brief cautionary language or instructions on how to apply these to Pennsylvania. So what comes next? Well, we had the final rule. We've posted these for comment. We actually just had one person provide really excellent comments, which we reviewed in detail to come up with our cautions and instructions. And then these revised indicators were submitted to the national office, and now they're pending publication to a federal register, and then they will be posted on our local field office tech guide. And that is the end of this update.
Thank you. Thank you, Melissa, for that update. And now let's move on to the next portion here, financial programs. And I'm going to start with Scott Heckman. He's the Assistant State Conservationist for Programs. He just came on board here in the last, 1 or 2 months, and we welcome here. He replaced Barry France. And Scott, welcome to the team, and look forward to your report. And please, when you're done with your section, pass on to the rest of the team.
Will do, Pete, and thank you. Sound check good here?
Yep.
Okay. And Tim will get my presentation up unless you want me to drive, Tim, and
No, I'm good, if that works for you.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. As Pete mentioned, my name is Scott Heckman. I'm the new Assistant State Conservationist for Programs out of the Harrisburg State Office. Prior to this, I was the Supervisory District Conservationist for what we refer to as Northeast Field Team 5, which encompassed Clinton Center and Lycoming counties. So I'm happy to spend this time with you this afternoon. Okay, Tim, next slide, please. So my financial programs update will involve, my topic will be sharing with you agricultural management assistance and the environmental quality incentive program. Ashley will then follow with her update on National Water Quality Initiative, the Conservation Stewardship Program, and Conservation Innovation Grants. She is our Conservation Program Manager for those 3 programs. And then Jim Gillis, our state biologist, will follow up with a very brief update on where we're involved with the CREP program, Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program, where we partner up with the Farm Service Agency. Next slide, please. So what I wanted to show to you is several bullet points here on increased interest in fiscal year 2021 NRCS programs. As many of you know, or for those that are just joining us for the first time, we have a continuous sign up for NRCS programs throughout the year. So if someone wants to mail in prior to the pandemic, drop off our office, or just email us an application for our programs, he or she can do that very easily. And we take that application and we then keep it on hold and reserved for when we do what we call a first round cutoff date, where we take those EQIP and AMA applications and we actually then start ranking, evaluating, assessing those to move forward with potential contracts. Typically, that's done around the middle of October. Pennsylvania, in the past 5 years, we looked at on average of receiving anywhere from 1,500 to 1,600 applications. However, for fiscal year 2021, I wanted just to show and bring everyone to speed. Maybe it's a result of the pandemic and landowners and farmers or individuals wanting to do some work and addressing resource concerns, but we have seen a large increase of applications where we have over 2,100 applications for EQIP, over 120 applications for AMA. And not to steal any thunder from Ashley, but just a quick check on Csp Renewals and Csp Classic. Approximately 500 applications were received by our field offices throughout the state. Next slide, please. This is just a state map. I'm going to be showing you some areas where funding goes to the west, northeast, and the southeast. If you're new, or just a refresher as to what those areas encompass or include as far as counties go throughout the state, where our field offices are located from the west, northeast to the southeast. Next slide, please. Okay, EQIP applications will include funds for all of these sub-fund accounts. And the first 8, if you will, plus conservation activity plan development, they refer to what we refer to them as our state fund codes, statewide fund codes, where you have livestock, poultry, grazing, cropland. We refer to those as our local. And then all the other programs or sub-fund account funds codes are what we refer to as area funds. And as was mentioned in the earlier portion of our presentation by Demka, urban conservation is new this year. We had some good success right out of the gate with that, where we had 9 applications, 5 of which were from the Harrisburg area, 3 were in the Pittsburgh area, and 1 was from the Philadelphia area. Next slide, please. So as far as an update on AMA and EQIP initial allocations, I wanted to provide this to you, and then even an additional allocations we've received and allocations that were requested that we're still waiting to hear upon. So the Agricultural Management Assistant Program, AMA, we typically would address resource concerns where practices such as irrigation and high tunnels are being implemented. In the past, PA would receive an initial allocation for each of those areas. Again, northeast, southeast, and the west. This year, in 2021, we received $362,000 for initial allocation for the northeast. An additional request was made and received for $200,000. That'll be split up based upon application signups for the southeast and the west. And then our very big program that we work with, the Environmental Quality Incentive Program, EQIP, Pennsylvania originally received approximately $19.38 million. An additional request was made and received for another $620,000 in those approved NWQI watersheds. And we're waiting upon hearing back from an additional request for EQIP and GWW. EQIP, we've requested another $5 million, mainly for the northeast and southeast, and another $100,000 for the Golden Ring Warbler Program initiative. Next slide, please. So as Dan mentioned, wanted to know where we're at right now as far as the status with EQIP and AMA NRCS programs, and specifically applications. Over the last several months, field offices have been working very hard on completing assessments and rankings for EQIP and AMA. They actually completed these, wrapped these up back in the end of March. Then now we're in the process of just starting to wrap up and have wrapped up, on Monday, the selections of those applications for funding. And we did that last Monday, the 19th. So now field offices are going to be very busy over the next 2 months working on completing contract obligations, working with landowners to get conservation plans and these contracts signed and uploaded and obligated. So we're looking forward to the progress of the field offices over the next 2 months. And it is our hope that we can get these obligated by the 1st of June. So we have established a deadline with the field offices to obligate those EQIP and AMA contracts. Next slide, please. New for this year, Pete mentioned a new program that we were just informed about. It's called the EQIP Conservation Incentive Contracts, or EQIP CIC. It's a new enrollment option program under the 2018 Farm Bill. Yes, you can imagine it's been a couple years since that Farm Bill has been released. We're getting it out finally. We're able to roll it out this year. And provisions will provide both an incentive practice payment for adopting practices and enhancement payments. Basically, to really summarize this, it blends our existing EQIP program with our conservation stewardship program. Some in our national office refer to it as a mashing of the sorts and working together between those two programs, again, adopting practices and enhancements. As we do in every year, we look to the State Technical Committee. NRCS really values your input on identifying new opportunities for this program, and we will take those into consideration for future EQIP CIC practices enhancements. So I wanted just to make sure, make everybody aware that this is a new program. We have never done this before. It'll be beefed up, if you will, bigger in 2022, but we're going to definitely try to get it out there and get it implemented this year yet. If you want more information on this or you want to provide input, please don't hesitate to contact me. Tim, next slide, please. And you can contact me at this email address or my cell phone number there at the NRCS State Office. So Pete, that's all I had. Unless there are questions, I'd be more than happy to entertain them. And if there are none, we'll turn it over to Ashley.
No questions, Scott.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
Hello, is anybody seeing my screen?
Yes, I am, Ashley. Good to go.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Actually, I think it's my screen, Ashley. Do you want me to share your slides?
Oh.
So you're not seeing my screen?
Here, yeah, I don't think yet.
Wait, let me try one more time.
I was seeing your first slide of your presentation, Ashley.
That's my fault. That's
no,
yeah.
No problem.
So you don't see it now either?
No, if you hit the box
Okay.
with the arrow pointing up, and then if you have to select a specific item you want shared down
Yeah,
below.
I tried that.
Oh, here,
Why don't
how about
you
I
go
just share your
ahead and,
slides?
share it.
Sounds
Yeah,
good.
that'd be great. Thanks. Okay, hello everybody. I'm Ashley Lenig, Conservation Program Manager that Scott just mentioned. I'm going to give you an update on, oh, could you advance the slide? I'm sorry. Trying to advance the slides even. Okay, so I'm going to give you updates on conservation innovation grants. You can think about that as the thing where you're going to innovate and transfer knowledge. So we're going to take innovative ideas and test them out and hopefully transfer them to other people, other sectors of agriculture. I'm also going to talk about the Conservation Stewardship Program, which you can remember by we want to reward the best and motivate the rest. And then I'm going to talk about the National Water Quality Initiatives, which is under Environmental Quality Incentives Program, where we're focused on a watershed and we're talking about improving water quality. Next slide, please. So for conservation innovation grants, I mentioned last time our priorities for last year, but here, I mentioned last time our priorities for fiscal year 2021, but here they are. You can see them again this time: soil health, water quality, urban farming, non-industrial private forest land. So where we are in this timeline is we're currently working on making our selections. In fact, we now have a meeting scheduled for later this week, and hopefully we'll be able to fund a few of those projects for this year. And then we look to make those notifications in August and award those agreements by the end of September, by September 15th. Next slide, please. Also wanted to briefly mention our conservation stewardship program. So one of our categories under that are the CSP renewals. Those are contracts that are actually continued from a previous contract. And at this point, we've done 45 of those on over 25,000 acres for over $2.9 million. So that's an update on that. Next slide, please. Then we also have a traditional program that we call CSP Classic. So Conservation Stewardship Program, Classic just means it's not a renewal. It's this traditional option. And that application period was announced the beginning of this month, and the deadline will be May 7th. And then we'll be working to get those ranked and obligate them for our state by the end of August, as you can see there. Next slide. I also mentioned, or Scott did too, National Water Quality Initiative. You'll remember we have 5 watersheds in our state. We had 21 applications in those 5 watersheds, and those are ranked, and we're preparing to develop the maps and the plans and the contracts to fund 11 of those with $1.5 million that we have of the amount that we need. So as you know, or as you may have picked up, we have gotten less money this year than we did last year in NWQI. Last year we had $3.5 million in contracts that we funded. So we'll see what happens there, but hopefully we can fund a lot of good work in our watersheds and have a positive impact on those ag impaired streams. Next slide. Then I wanted to just give you an example. Last time I showed, I think, 3 different watersheds, what they were doing for outreach. So here's another one. Warrior Run back in November had a free tree event for their watershed residents. It was a drive-through setup where you would drive through and pick up a tree. So they were able to deliver 757 trees in 2.5 hours, along with educational materials that they provided. And that was a grant that Northumberland County Conservation District sponsored through the 10 Million Tree Partnership Program. They also had the Boy Scouts there, where they taught about riparian buffers, and they actually planted trees, not a whole lot of trees, but they planted some trees, so they learned about that process. Warrior One Watershed has 68 miles of impaired streams, so of course any education and outreach we do there is a positive thing. Next slide. And that's all I have, unless you have questions for me. Thanks.
No questions right now, Ashley.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley. Next up is Jim Gillis, our state biologist.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. I think I have the distinction of having the shortest presentation for today. I'm going to give you a quick update on the CREP or CREP program. There really isn't much to update for CREP. If you keep an eye on the national CRP program, of which CREP is an offshoot, you might be aware that there are other subsets of CRP which haven't been announced or opened yet. And unfortunately, that does not apply to CREP. CREP has been open since about November of last year. Signups are continuing through CREP. We actually have a little bit of an increase in interest in CREP this year, although we haven't been able to tally any of the numbers of applications because that's done by our sister agency, Farm Service Agency. But as we know right now, signups are continuing. Plan writing is developed quite well. and there's a lot of interest in management practices for existing CREP contracts, and also there's been a decent amount of interest in re-enrolling expiring CREP contracts. So with that, that's the end of my summary, that there is really nothing new to report. It's business as usual. We're moving ahead pretty well. And if anyone has any questions, please let me know.
Thank you, Jim. Anything in the chat box there, Tim?
No questions. Nope.
Okay. Like Jim must have a lot of static, but there you go. Thank you, Jim. So let's move on to our next presentation. It's by Hathaway Jones, Management Analyst, to talk about Agricultural Conservation Easements Program, ACEP.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just got a few updates for ASAP. The first update is that our geographic area rate caps were approved by the National Office for 2021. And those are the values that we give per acre by region in Pennsylvania to landowners for their land that they are enrolling into the Wetland Reserve Easement Program. And so those have been approved. They're the same as last year. We were able to get an extension on those, and those were provided to you for this meeting as a handout for your review. So that's exciting news, and we'll be starting the next GARC rate cycle for 2022 in a couple weeks. We're just waiting on a bulletin from the National Office to start that process, and then we'll be contracting a new market analysis to get the values for counties for 2022. We've got some exciting news for an additional easement program in addition to ASAP. The Healthy Forest Reserve Program has been authorized in Pennsylvania for 2021, and this is basically this is old money, so it's the same program that we had back in 2010, 2011, if some of you remember, and it's the same format of the same counties. We're targeting the same species, the Indiana bat, and working with partners, of course, to figure out which bat locations are or which properties are in close proximity to maternity and hibernacula colonies for the Indiana bat. Excuse me, Indiana bat, and those will be our highest priority eligible properties for enrollment. We have about $300,000 to spend, and that doesn't go very far, so we expect that might fund one easement, maybe two if they're smaller. We have a considerable amount of expenses that go into getting an appraisal and doing a survey for the properties that are enrolled that do rank highly enough for funding. So that $300,000 will go pretty quickly. We announced funding for this in March, and our application deadline is April 30th. So far, we haven't gotten any applications yet, but we have a few properties that we're interested in talking to landowners. And the Healthy Forest Program will provide funding also, not just for the easement, but for a restoration to improve habitat on the property for the Indiana bat, and that is covered, the cost of that restoration is covered at 100%. And then just so everyone knows, the counties where we've determined Indiana bat maternity and hibernacula exist, Beaver, Armstrong, Cambria, Blair, Bedford, Huntingdon, Center, Mifflin, Snyder, Adams, York, and Berks counties are the counties that we are targeting with this $300,000 in HFRP funding. We are only interested in enrolling a permanent easement or easements, however many properties we can get with that funding, and the accompanying restorations that will go with them. So that's the HFRP program. It's exciting. We've got funding again. We're hoping to be able to preserve a property, and we're still looking for applications to be submitted by April 30th. And let's move on to other ASAP, our ASAP programs update. We have WRE and ALE. The application deadlines for those were March 1st. We've got quite a few ALE applications in process. So we have about 380,000 remaining of that initial pot of money that we got for ALE. We initially got $1.7 million. So we've gotten quite a few applications for that, and looking to use that last bit of funding on maybe 1 or 2 more properties. So we still have funding available. For WRE, we have about $600,000 in funding available, and we have had some interest across the state, some bog turtle properties and some regular properties. Nothing solid has panned out yet, but we're really getting out there in the field right now to vet the properties that may be good fits for the program, and we'll see how we do with those. We'll take applications even though our deadline is passed, although realizing the later we get in the fiscal year, the less time we'll have to ensure obligation of that funding. It does take quite a bit to get these in the door, especially with our new processes for Conservation Desktop and CART. So that is easements. Does anyone have any questions about easements?
Nothing in the chat, Hathaway.
Okay. Thanks everyone for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Hathaway. Okay, up next on our agenda is Susan Marquardt, Assistant State Conservationist for Partnerships. And before she says anything, I will tell you folks that NRCS, in delivering our programs and your programs, we have a staff of around 200 people. We also have a staff, an auxiliary affiliate staff of around 100, and we were able to provide more funding to continue on with the Pheasants Forever program, and also to keep staffing going with a partnership with PACD. So we were able to cobble together funding for the next year or two to keep those 2 programs going. So that's a good thing. Certainly keeping our affiliates funded is always a good help. So back to you, Susan Marquardt.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to give you a quick update on the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. That's RCPP. 3 things to bring to your attention today. We have an open round for funding for which applications must be received by NRCS by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on May 28th. This project opportunity is for activities and conservation measures that don't fit into our normal programs. And it's more, has more flexibility in terms of what the partners can do. And the partners really need to take ownership of the entire program and do all of the work themselves with very minimal help from NRCS. In the nation right now, we will have 75 million available nationwide, and that will fund up to 15 potential projects. So if you're interested in that opportunity and you have any questions, you may call me or email me. I am the RCPP coordinator for Pennsylvania. We also right now have some applications that are pending. The national office is looking at those applications now. Those are for the FY 2021 RCPP Classic. We're hoping to get an announcement by the end of February, or the end of April. So we're hoping that that will come soon. As soon as we get that information, we will put it out in a press release and also contact the people that have been selected and those that were not selected, and we'll let everyone know. We are expecting another funding opportunity this summer, and that will be for the next round of the RCPP Classic. So look for that sometime this summer. That will be put out in a press release announcement as well. I can't tell you the exact date, but we've been told that that will come out this summer. So be on the lookout for that if you're interested in RCPP Classic. So that's really all I have right now. Pete, if anybody has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Susan, one question. What does AFA stand for?
Okay, thanks. AFA is Alternative Funding Arrangements. So that's the reference to this isn't like a normal program. This is where the partner does all the work themselves, and folks wouldn't be coming in to us looking for the same kind of assistance that they would get under EQIP. Any applicants would be going to the partner to receive the information and make application.
No other questions. That was it.
Okay.
Okay, folks. This is Pete again. I see we have 49 attendees. Does anyone on the attendee that's not an NRCS person, do they have any questions or comments they'd like to make at this point in time? You have an opportunity to speak up and tell us your story or ponder a question or make a comment, whatever. Now's your opportunity. So unmute your mic and it's your chance to say something. So we'll give you another 30 seconds here to see if anybody's brave enough to talk to us today.
It's Demka. I just want to thank y'all for the opportunity to open this up to Philadelphia County, especially since we have so little representation. A lot of this, I see one of my colleagues online here, it might be some new information to some of your programs, especially to farm services overall. So I just want to thank you for making this meeting public and bringing a lot of people to the table that might not know even what y'all do as far as agriculture. So thank you.
Thank you, Dimka. Anyone else? Okay, seeing lots of silence out there. Everybody's thinking about the 65 to 70 degree temperature outside there. Appreciate you all attending the meeting today, and some things to remember. Our next State Technical Committee meeting is going to be on Wednesday, July 21st, 2021. And then the next one will be Thursday, October 21st, 2021. So who knows, maybe the October 21st event will actually be able to come live together for at least 1 or 2 times a year. So that's something to look forward to. If any of the information you weren't able to get a hold of or see, certainly get a hold of myself or Tim Peters, and we'll try to get that information out to you. We want to make sure you all have the opportunity to do that, and certainly appreciate the other speakers, Eric Chase, Dimka and Scott, and Jared Shippey for their presentations today. And with that, have a great day and enjoy.
Hey, Pete, before you hang up, I just want to say thank you guys for the test run for last week. That helped me out to be on today. So I know I was a bit challenged for Tim, but I think it was a good thing to have a test run last week for me.
Pastor Berkeley, we appreciate you telling us that. And, we've been using Teams for a while, and I just found out the other day that the Pennsylvania DEP, maybe the whole DEP organization is going to Teams too. So Teams has become a more common platform out there. So it's a good learning experience, and you'll be better at the next one you go to. So we appreciate your comment, and have a great day.
Okay, you too. Thanks.
Okay. With that, folks, we'll see you later.